Welcome, thinkers, to Season 3, Episode 22 of Thinking Critically. Today's topic is Assemble. And if you're listening to this fresh, hot off the presses, the day it releases, stop listening and head straight to twitch.tv/thinkingcritically, as I'll be slap bang in the middle of a 12-hour charity stream. So please come over, support the charity, it'd be much appreciated, and then you can always loop back round to this episode later. Anyway, on with the show. And today I'm joined by Michael, the dead Aussie Gamer. Thank you ever so much for joining us today, Michael. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
G'day, yeah, thanks for having me on. My name's Michael, I'm the Dead Aussie Gamer. I'm a professional entertainer and game master from Western Australia, and I go about the internet, lurking on people's channels, finding a way to weasel myself into games and onto tables, and of course, dealing out those sweet D&D rules for all the people online, as well as some local youngsters here in Australia. Yeah, I consider myself to be both an entertainer and an ambassador for role-playing, showing people not just Dungeons & Dragons, but like all manner of role-play and the benefits it has for those who play it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And no one else would have been more qualified for today's topic of Assemble. So what does that mean to you in the D&D and wider ttrpg framework?
Well, what it means is that clearly a group of individuals are getting together in order to have a giant Avengers Endgame scene where a bunch of people show up with D&D character sheets and, just together in unison yell out, "Murder hobos, assemble!" and then ruin my day. No. Assemble is such an interesting word. Assemble can mean so many different things in this space. It can talk about the way that we assemble our tables in terms of like who we decide to play with. It can come down to who we assemble as a team when we create these characters, who they are and how they interact with each other. Or it could even mean like the assembly of our world and our space and the actual encounters that we face through these magical and imaginary tales. The way that things are put together, be it on a strong foundation or be it sort of done improvisationally, is a huge topic, I think, for the role-playing space, and so keen to explore all of these. But yeah, that's honestly what it means to me. It's the building blocks of everything we do.
Mm-hmm. Let's start then with trying to play the game, I guess, is a good a place to start as any. As in, like, say somebody says, I want to start playing, or a DM is I'm getting a team together. They they want to find players. What kind of considerations have to be made then? And I know there's obviously quite a lot of talk in the space around playing with maybe not like-minded individuals, but those who have a similar style to you. So I'd be interested to get your take on what considerations have to be made there, and then also anything that you have around when you said you play with the younger folk and get them in and bring other people into the sphere and stuff, and how does that, because that's obviously quite a unique proposition as well compared to just me playing at home with my mates.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, let me start by throwing an addendum here, or even a slight correction, is I do not think the best games come from people who play with like-minded people. Mm-hmm. I think those are enjoyable, and I definitely enjoy doing those as kind of like, short-term or one-shot adventures. But one thing I think that makes any good table good is diversity and versatility. Mm-hmm. I've played on a large number of tables. My actual schedule for the last maybe 7 years so far has been 10 to 15 games per week, which obviously is part of my casual enjoyment versus my my actual professional commitments and stuff like that, has allowed me to see just so many different types of tables put together. I've seen tables that are just synergized instantly and become close friends, and I've seen people who have somehow made a group of people who borderline hate each other come together in order to actually play and enjoy the game. So the best games for me are the ones where you assemble people who are who would otherwise just not be in the same situation, who would not be socializing with each other outside of D&D, because it's for me like a great unifier. It's something that we find common grounds with people with such drastically different opinions and creativities and sort of beliefs. And it's great to be able to tap into these places when it comes to exploring and growing our own creativity. It gives us more stuff to look at. If you try to create something and somebody else comes up with the exact same idea, then really all you're doing is just reverberating the same ideas. You're never really growing or expanding. And like I said, for short-term games, that's great. But, if you really want to get to the meat and juicy bits of like a good role-playing table, assembling a versatile group is always number one on my cards.
Mm-hmm.
But to go back to the point of the question here, which was, like what happens if you're trying to put together as a GM a brand new table. So I always look at one simple rule. Who do you want to play with? Who do you enjoy spending time with? Because as a GM, you are under the most social pressure. You are the person who is under the most strain and the most likely to receive like D&D fatigue. So in order to combat that, the first step is building a foundation upon people who you just get excited to be around, to just play with. Even if you don't play the game, like, if you've got that friend that shows up with donuts every week, like, you want to be with that guy because that guy is just always friendly and happy and cheerful, but he, is just garbage at creativity and just plays wallflower characters. Invite that person because that person might enjoy games in a different way to you, but you will gain the benefit of their joy spreading to you throughout the game. So that's person number one, is always that fuel for yourself. Following that, you want to look at people who are going to not only be enjoyable to be around, but also give you a means of creativity, right? You might have somebody who is really into D&D, like so passionately into D&D. You're getting messages every other night from them. Cool, bring that guy along. That's no worries. He'll keep you on your toes. He'll play around with the hype and the energy. But then you've got another person who is kind of like really into the role play and really into the acting. Cool, bring that person along. Bounce off and learn from their acting experience and their ability to put these characters into like their role play paces. And then, like you said, if you've got like tons of different people that you just simply want to hang out with, keep going with that. These are, for me, where a new GM or a game that is very, very much starting out, that's where you need to begin with. These are the people you want to invite.
Mm-hmm. Well, firstly, thank you because you've inadvertently made me feel very good about myself because, as I was saying just before we started recording, my guys and all the players at my table are very mixed in terms of what you've just described, basically. So experience and the ways they engage and what they take from it. And now I'm kind of having this introspection, and I have to say that must be one of the reasons why I find myself having this discussion with you today and being confident enough to do a podcast like this, is because I've had that experience of those mixed players. And like, you could have been reeling off my players, actually, those archetypes you just went through there, and how uncanny they were. But yeah, one guy, he keeps, that's what they always say, right? As long as players, they keep turning up for the games, they're happy that they want to be there, right? To try and beat some of that GM imposter syndrome.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, sorry. Just before we jump into that, I was going to say, one of the interesting things you said there, we are our harshest critics when it comes to being a GM. And another good thing about those versatile games is you will have people who are dissatisfied, but ideally, if you've got a great lineup of versatile people, you'll have that other person who will be your rock, who will turn around and always tell you that you have done a fantastic job, that you make the world out for them and stuff like that. So that's where you'll find the longest games tend to be tables of those types of player builds. So it's great. It's great that you've managed to put together a really cool and versatile team.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't take any credit for that. That's just how it's just how it turned out. But yeah, one guy, as I said, he is quite passive in terms of both mechanics and actually he's coming out of his shell a little bit more. But there was a period when he was quite passive in game as well. So much so that a couple of other players were like, "Why is he even here?" And I said, "Hey man, if anything, that's great for me because he's really lightweight. I don't have to do any like it's nice to have that kind of player, actually, because it's very easy for me to run a game for him because it's so relaxed in a way." And then I have all the way up, I've got a guy who is very let's just say, wants to be very efficient and effective, which is my roundabout way of saying, broadly, he's like a min-maxer. But the nice way of saying is he wants, everything to be the most effective as possible. And then everybody in between those two extremes. I've got, players that really into the spice and the juice and the controversy and the twists and turns, and others who are there just to, I've got this really good build I want to try, and it's more video gamey for them, and they want to try this new combinations of feats and abilities, like Bugbear with a reach with a pole arm to have 15-foot reach. Like, that's a cool idea.
Do you have someone who has the hero shuffle?
What's that?
Oh, the hero shuffle players. They are so if you remember, there's a song which was like, every day I'm shuffling, it's the player who shows up every week with, I've got a new character idea and I want to try, and then it's like, I want to try this character build and I want to try that character build. A few of my Pathfinder players are hero shufflers, and it's really funny too, because I do embarrass them, because one, I find it very disruptive and I hate it. And I'll let them do it, but I'll make sure that they feel my disdain for it by playing that song every time they do it, and they're just like, yeah, whatever, and I'm like, yeah, you know what it is. You have to listen to this song every time you do it.
I think if I allowed it, there's certainly players that would in my game that would want to mix it up and stuff. But it's hard enough trying to rejig the campaign if a couple of the characters die and I have to bring in new ones, let alone, that's like once a year that happens, let alone once a week. So no.
Oh my god, yeah, no, I've had one who literally did it every week until I went to them and said, if you change your character again, you're only using core rules. that was literally it was just so frustrating. It was like, I think every week for 4 months, maybe. Like, I'm not even exaggerating, every week for 4 months, because the thing is that they put characters, what they tend to do is they tend to put a lot of stock in their characters' role playing for them. It's like them buying a dead parrot from a store and then taking it home and going, why is it not doing anything? I clearly bought a parrot. It was supposed to entertain me, and it is not entertaining. And then they go back and they buy another dead parrot. You breathe life into your characters. You don't build them and then expect them to entertain you. It's very weird. Yeah.
I've never. That's really interesting. I've never really thought of it like that before. But absolutely, I can see how people would do that. Would have they think it's going to be entertainment just because it exists, just because it's a thing that they've put. It's this lineage with this class. That would be fun. Sit at the table, but the players have to make it fun. It won't just. Otherwise, it's just a static piece of paper on the table, right?
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
Okay, that's good. I'm quite happy with that. That's really interesting to think of to think of that. Yeah.
Oh man, the thing is that there are archetypes of players. Now, I don't mean to say that all D&D players are the same. You're not always going to find the same types of min-maxers. You're always going to find the same types of like role players and stuff like that. You'll always find a nice variety of things, but each of the archetypes tend to follow particular rules. Like if you want, and this goes to everyone in the podcast who is a GM who has a rules lawyer at the table or someone who really focuses on mechanics, I want you to try something for me. I want you to try building an encounter, and the encounter can be anything you want for your campaign, but have one simple truth. Have something be solved by like a riddle or a puzzle or by being smart, like, something that they would know, right? And then just have the NPC be wrong, but insistent that they're right. There is no faster way to enrage a rules lawyer than to have an NPC who you as a GM know is wrong, but as an NPC, their mentality is it's absolutely wrong. It's 100%. Like, they look at the skeleton, they just say, oh, no, it's just the old lady. It's like, no, it's not an old lady, it's a skeleton. It's like, no, it's an old lady. She comes through every day. A skeleton is going through your town every day. Pfft, rubbish. Prove it. Okay, cool. I go and stab it. It's like, you stabbed the old lady. Really kind of lean into it, and it gets them so angry because their mindset is very much like, we need to explain this logically, right? We need you to understand why you're wrong, and they will not budge until that NPC understands that they're incorrect. But if they're delusional or just not belligerent. I wouldn't say belligerent. Don't make them belligerent, right? But if they just don't understand what you're saying, it's a thing. And it doesn't matter. Like I said, it doesn't matter which person it is. If you fall into the rules lawyer archetype, that is a trigger. That is one of those things. And as a GM, what you can do is when you assemble your table, you can use those strategies in order to build what I like to call your social biome. The social biome is where once you've put your players together, you are on an adventure. You're creating the story. But the story is not just about the journey that you take in your imagination, but also the journey that the characters and the players have with that story. So there are moments where you want to make the big bad guy a source of antagonization, not just for your characters, but for the players as well. And that might involve things like that, like enchanting an entire village to believe that the Lord is actually this really kind and benevolent person, and having the whole town turn on the heroes because they've all been charmed by a charm spell. One player being infuriated because they refuse to see reason, but having another person be very empathetic and turning around and saying, no, we have to help them, creates a great social biome for you to exist in for this game. And as a GM, you don't have to do jack. You just sit back and you watch the players just exist with these characters. Which, plays back again, like I said, one of the great foundations of assembling your perfect table, that versatility, that different methods of handling situations and stuff like that. Absolutely beautiful to see that in play.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any examples of where that's happened. I did have what you just described there. They were in a village, like proper classic, typical medieval village, down on its luck. Half the people have vacated the village. Blah blah blah. People are going missing. Classic fantasy fare. They go into a tavern. The first one's called like the Lame Potato, but the sign is hanging off on one hinge and the E has fallen off and this, that and the other. And the tavern owner in there, long story short, is his wife has gone missing and he is delusional and thinks that she's still with him and cooking and stuff. It's pretty sad, I have to say. But that was a very same situation where a couple of my players were like, no, dude, she's gone. And he's like, no, she'll be back. She's just gone out to get some bread and milk and bread. And they were like, no, something's so suspicious here. And I was just like, no, he's just a poor bastard.
Just a sad poor bastard. Yeah. No, absolutely.
And that was absolutely triggering for them. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. And like I said, it's not triggering in a bad way either. And it's good for sometimes your players to see that the solution won't necessarily lie in the mechanics. And that's what those moments kind of not just teach, but they kind of go through. So your rules lawyer, who is very traditionally looking for answers through mechanics, through skill checks, through rules, and more specifically through explanation, won't find the answer there. It's found through the other side of things, which may not be a strength for that player. The empathy, the ability to sit down and maybe talk to that man and say, why don't you tell me a bit about your wife while we wait for her to come back? And then having him sort of start sort of talking about his wife and, some of like the way they met and what happened. And then eventually coming to the point of their death, having this guy break down would be just such a gut wrenching scene, but it's one of those things that it then values your empath player. It values, shows what they do. So even if you have the character who says, I'm going to make, Sparkles McSparkleface, who is a bard, and I'm also a half-orc, so I've got, I try my best with my charisma, but I've got like really crap stats in charisma, and then the rules lawyer might turn around and be like, what have you made and why is this a thing? And what am I looking at? What am I looking at here? Suddenly becomes like actually it has nothing to do with the numbers on my sheet. I'm actually a really good role player and I don't need to roll dice. I just know how to be in the scene and help the situation along the way that it should go because I'm a good storyteller.
What you've brilliantly described there sounds, on the face of it, sounds like, oh, blimey, that's tricky to understand and tricky to get, and now maybe I should go home and think about my characters and whatnot. But the funny thing is that it is actually pre-baked in different wording, but all the way back. I'm thinking about D&D here in my head, but all the way back when it's the DM makes you asks for you to roll, and not the players asking to roll, and that is the distinction there, to say the players, you don't need to focus on that. You just focus on playing the game, and then those things that you've just described will just come out naturally, because they're not focused on which one of these 20 things on my sheet here should I click to roll.
100%. And you know what's really interesting when you say that? I actually have a house rule that I use wherever I can. Obviously I don't use it when I'm performing online, but one of the things I say is that if you ask me for a roll, assume you fail.
Mm-hmm.
That's a general rule of thumb. If you ask me for a roll, assume you fail. Don't tell me that you're intimidating someone. Tell me what you do. Show me what you do. Don't tell me I'm going to make an athletics check to do blah. Jump across this thing and I'll tell you. Because sometimes, in fact, most of the time, I won't even ask for a roll. I'm not going to waste my brain power trying to figure out the DC of flicking a freaking snot booger bullet across the room to hit the teacher in the face. I'm not going to waste my time with that. I got bigger things to worry about. So, sometimes there won't even be one. But having to wait for your check, having for you to do the math to calculate it, and then eventually tell me a number I didn't ask for. I'm just like, no, just be in the moment, dude. Like, be here, be there, do the thing, and I'll let you know if you need to do something. Oh, actually, this is a really good story of that. So one of the very first times I played D&D, very, very first times I played D&D 5e, I was at a convention that I'd been invited to guest at, and I was only just dipping my toe into 5th edition because I was one of those people who started with 3.5 and 3.0, evolved into Pathfinder, and then said, 4e, get thee behind me, demon! Didn't really like 4e, so I didn't even give 5e a chance. But I went to a convention, people then said, hey, you should try this, so I was like, okay, fine. So I tried a bard, and I based him off a Irish comedian by the name of Dylan Moran. So it was basically, Dylan's character from Black Books called Bernard.
Black Books, yep.
Who was just this sarcastic bastard. And one of the things I did was, instead, whenever I used inspiring performance, instead of using bardic inspiration to play a musical tune, I'd just basically start insulting them. It's like, would you like me to get you a hand for you, lad? Like, maybe I can go back into town and see if a little girl can come lift that for you. And, and they'd just be so angry, they then roll the D6 and be like, so, and there was another moment where we went against, like, this super boss, and this kobold leader was like, we will now raise the dragon army, and then we will bring doom to all the surface dwellers. And then you hear from the back, like, oi, what's it like? What's the pay like being a dragon's condom? And and then I cast vicious mockery, and the GM literally turned to me and said, "No, he fails. Like, he outrightly he doesn't make the save. He's down." And I loved that. I loved the feeling of it. I loved the fact that there was no dice involved. I loved the fact that I was rewarded for being creative in that sense, and I wanted to take that with me to other games. So and the GM for that was a guy named Sam, I think, or Sean. I can't remember. I feel terrible, but yes. So if he's listening, then thank you for that. Because it was just wonderful to be able to get yourself into a game like that.
Oh, amazing! Thank you for sharing that. So that's a great story, and it's nice to see that propagation of tips and advice is now obviously bled into your games and is now on my podcast, so that maybe other people can hear it and learn from it and then introduce it and put their own spin on it and stuff. So I'm very happy to be part of that propagation chain. Now, this is going to be a very pertinent question for you based on what you said earlier on about how many games you play in a given week. Now, obviously, everyone always complains about scheduling, and one piece of assembling a table is getting everybody to be free at the same time. Quite an important piece, I think. Have you fell foul of that at any point? And if so, what was the outcome? But also, how do you deal with like these billion games you have a different game every minute? Like,
so here's a fun fact for the podcasters listening. I'm actually running a game right now. Believe it or not,
you mean like literally as we're recording, not just in this frame of time?
Well, actually, you know what? Chances are, while you're listening to this, I'm probably running a game. But no, right now, as we are recording this, I am on a break from a game that I'm running that I will be picking up after we record this podcast. My players are sitting down to level up, so I've bought a little bit of time to come and do the podcast, which I timed for today. Scheduling can be so tricky, and it is something I have run afoul of many, 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 many times. One of the things that helps is it's my occupation, so most of my games are paid work. So looking at how my per hour, you know what I mean? Like it gives me value in doing all of them. That being said, there are people who seek me out for my time, and it's usually about doing those things that I have the most difficulty. So let's see. I've got 2 games on Monday, 2 games on Tuesday, one of which is fortnightly, 3 games on Wednesday, one of which is fortnightly. I've got 2 games on Friday, one of which is fortnightly, 3 games on Saturday, and then 1 game fortnightly on 2 games on Sunday, one of which is fortnightly. So that's every single week. That is what my regular schedule is without my extras. So when I say I run afoul of this, what I mean is these games are all my professional games that I play for work. There's a certain level of preparation that goes into them. There's a minimum requirement for them. But for the most part, these things are stuff that I have taken the time to prep and be prepared for. But if I want to do something like for myself, like if I want to actually just sit down and play with some friends and stuff like that, those are where it gets harder, because not only do I need to schedule for myself amongst the busyness of everything that I'm doing, most of the friends and associates that I have are also in this performance space where they are equally as busy doing this whole sort of thing. In fact, a couple of my friends have literally gotten to a point where the only way for me to actually game with them is to actually put on an event. I'll find a sponsor, get a paid event going, and then be like, hey, guess what? This now has turned from a let's find some free time to a let's do some work and get paid. So that's how I got around it. I don't recommend it for everyone. It's very difficult and the money's not great. But as soon as you start paying your performers to come and hang out with you, schedules tend to be a bit more flexible.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Yeah. I think again, this is a funny thing that I wanted to say is that a number of players in my game were new. Certainly, some even don't play even video games or board games or any role-playing games. They're very much a new experience for them, and I do have to remind them. We've been going consistently with a couple of short breaks, holidays, and illnesses, and so on and so on, for almost 3 years at this point. Started weekly for the first 10 or so sessions, and I pushed it out to fortnightly. And I have to remind them. I'm like, guys, like, we are exceptionally lucky at how routine and trivial it has been to set up this routine. Like, you won't believe. I mean, obviously, group chats with other games that I play in or used to play in and whatnot, and just watching those fall over every other week because of issues or scheduling issues, or people can't make it, or this week we're moving house and this, that, and the other. I'm like, guys, you don't. Good luck finding another game like this. Like, you'll miss me when I'm gone.
Oh yeah, no. Look, even with someone with my experience and my standing as a professional GM, there are definitely weeks where you sit there and you're like, why are there 2 or 3 players like consecutively missing my games, or and the tough bit is that as a GM, you always place that blame on yourself as well. You never turn around and you go, oh, they were just busy this week, or oh, they like something came up. It kind of always digs just that little tiny bit where it's like, are you not having fun? Are you really so uninterested with what I'm doing that you'd much rather do other things every single time we're supposed to sit down for a game? It digs. It does. But I want any GM who's listening to know that it rarely is that case. Sometimes it is, and if it is, then shame on you, GM. But if it's not, if your players literally haven't sat there and told you, no, I would literally rather be peeling paint off walls than be playing your game. If your players don't sit down and tell you that, then 90% of the time it's because like life happens, like people have things and commitments and responsibilities, especially the older you get, and it has nothing to do with your skill or your capabilities as a GM.
Yeah. Well, that ties into what we were saying earlier on about you're your own worst critic, and also if they do turn up, then they're having fun. So I think it's more important that they come back after having a week or two off, because it still means that it was just life getting in the way, as you said.
Yeah,
and
of course.
yeah, we were just so. I've said it before on the podcast, and I'll say it again. It was just, we were all colleagues at the time, so it was like a piece of cake to have everyone in the same room, because we were being paid to be in the same room daily because we work together. So it's very easy to be like, right, when can you do it? When can you do it? When can you? Okay, right, that's the schedule set up. And then once we had that locked in, it was actually after work, so it was a piece of cake again to be like, are you? We're playing tonight, we're playing tonight, we're playing tonight, we're playing tonight. Yep, cool. We're like meerkats in the office, it got to about 5 p.m. and we're all like sticking our heads up and being like, yeah, you ready to leave? You ready to leave? Yep, cool, right. And then we'd all leave, and go around the guy's house and play the game that evening. So
awesome.
That was, very, very, very lucky. And I've only been on my DM holiday now for one session equivalent's worth, so 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm missing it a little bit, which is weird considering we haven't even hit Christmas yet and we're not playing again until middle of January. But it is like, I want to get guys. But I've got because 2 characters have just died, so the new year we're going into 2 new characters coming in.
That's cool.
So it's a very exciting time to go back at the table. Are these games that you are running and playing in, are they predominantly, well, this is obviously a bit of a weird question considering the time we live in at the moment. I presume they're all remote for the most part?
No, not at all. So I live in Western Australia, which when it came down to COVID, we did well. A lot of what we did in place during that period of time, I think we only had like a 5-week lockdown at the height of COVID. And then we had like a 3-day lockdown between there and now, and that was it. That we've been business as usual for quite some time. There are obviously things in place here in WA, like in case stuff happens. But so because I've been in my job for like 7 years, most of my work used to be at my local government youth center. I work as a local government worker, as a GM for the city, and I'm running games for kids, introducing them to role-playing games, which during my time there has been very much about building up their confidence, helping them with self-esteem issues, bridging communication gaps, and even helping some kids who are on the spectrum feel accepted in the hobby that, most people, may not necessarily accept or understand them, and the special needs that they may require. We've been all about that. And the great thing is it's been one of the most successful programs we've run, and we've consecutively run it for years now. When COVID hit, we went online straight away because thankfully I was already in the business of streaming and stuff like that. So I was like, cool, I push a button, we're online. And we kept going. So we barely missed a beat. But now that we're, again, off the other side of that lockdown period, half of my games are in person. Again, the game I'm playing today or tonight is in person as well. So I've got my mates in the next room eating all my brownies. But for the rest of them, most of my professional stuff is online. So I have Patreon games where people pay to be on one of my tables, which I also stream. So you can catch those on my Twitch channel. But yeah, those ones are all remotely and online. Then I also do special event ones, which I do with people from all over the world, celebrities who also do the online streaming stuff. And then we, again, gather up to promote stuff and broadcast it for people to watch and enjoy.
I wanted to say, when you started that with you GM for the government, it sounds well sinister.
Oh yeah, super sinister. Yeah, super dodgy.
And B, I was just thinking, like, in the satanic panic, can you imagine how freaked out like people would have been when like I'm doing this for the government? That's like, whoa.
Yeah, you know what? I still have to try. I still get sideways looks when I have to explain to parents what I do. Like, when they come in with their kids. Like, we had this lovely couple. A mom and her daughter came in because my boss is trying to get more young females into like role playing in D&D. And when they showed up, it's like, and this is Michael. He's our dungeon master. And I'm like, you're not gonna give any context to that. Okie dokie. My name is I left completely hanging. So it's kind of one of those funny things because either you know what a DM is, you assume what a DM is, or you ask what a DM is. That's always the case. But the great thing there is that my value to the government is less about. Well, it is still about the D&D stuff, right? It's about providing a service, but more importantly, it's a nice bridge between young people and adults who don't understand gaming, who don't understand what people get out of it, because there's such a strong need, and this goes back to our topic of assembly, where people need acceptance, and getting acceptance online is difficult. Because when we're online, we have a certain level of anonymity. There is a certain level of natural disconnect. We have grown up in an age of technology where mass communication has led to the fact that a lot of people will have friends online that they have no idea what their real name is. And that's an accepted truth in the world as we see it right now. Whereas the other side of that is that we are learning less and less about how to socialize in person, how to actually create these bonds, and how to actually learn how to do something quite as simple as, hi, I like you, can we be friends? Right? Like, and I hate to be that old man who goes, back in my day, but, back in my day, I punched someone to make friends with them, and I don't know why. Till this day, like, my best friends, I'm fairly sure I have either hit with a piece of polypipe or I have punched in the face. And that's because I grew up in a very rough part of Australia, but, it's gone from that to, hi, do you like eggplants? Like, I've got no, like, you've got no way to, like, it's like, how do we communicate now? And a lot of the young kids today are very much interested in learning how to communicate with other people, and parents are interested in learning how to communicate with their young people. Like, what are the things you can approach them about? What are the things you need to just smile and nod and listen to? And what are the things that you need to understand that when your 10-year-old child says that you murdered a barkeeper, that it doesn't mean that they're turning into a sociopath,
Yes.
Like, so that's my real role, is the nerd linguist, as it were, and being able to, the nerd whisperer.
An interface, as they say. I do it in a very not professional capacity for my sister's kids. So my two nephews, 13 and 10. Obviously, they are very much Fortnite and Minecraft generation, and despite me being 20 years older than them, I am the closest they have in their wider family. So obviously they've got the mum and the dad, my grandparents, and their other uncle, but I am the closest they have in terms of generation to understanding, if they start flossing, they don't mean they're going to go and do some dental hygiene. I know what they're going to go and do. And like, if they're talking about, chapter 7 in Fortnite has dropped, I'm like, I don't play it, but I know this context of what you're talking about makes sense to me. Whereas both, so I'm kind of that interface for him and his parents to a certain extent, because they're like, we're buying him this thing, and I'm like, yeah, don't you probably don't need to do that, like, because it's a waste of money or this, that, and the other.
Oh yeah, no, and what's really funny is you always come up with those kids that think that mom and dad, they know so little, and they try to twist things around on them. Like, I had this kid who I dealt with who convinced mom and dad to fork out like a $3,000 high-tech computer for what was effectively a community course, like for IT. And it was like, you see the level of like education people get for that level. You don't require $3,000 to build your own like custom gaming rig to attend these classes. But mom and dad are like, oh yes, no, he's into the computer thing and the internet. He needs this device, and he just gave us a budget, and I was just like, no, he's lying to you. Like, you absolutely do not need like a GeForce 12 series graphics card to do IT. If you've ever been to any office in Australia, you know that none of these computers are. These computers are, like, there are some of our computers where the keys are still like make the ching every time we type it, right? Like, there's definitely something to be said about that, but yeah, I mean, look, I'm not one to oust, kids, but I'm also one to like make sure that there's kindness between both gaps,
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Because I also know that parents tend to call me up and say, excuse me, but my child appears to be using far too much of this internet. I don't know what a fortnight is, but he's been playing it since till 5 in the morning, and it's unacceptable. I think he might be a gaming addict. And it's like, well, no, he's not a gaming addict. He is a victim of very clever game formatting, because between a session of Fortnite, between match 1 and 2, you have the better part of a minute to come down from a dopamine rush in order to have enough cognitive processing power to be able to turn around and go, I am tired, I want to go to bed. But by the time you're in a game, you're like, well, I'm in a game and I don't want to be punished by leaving the game too early, because the game actually will punish you for doing that. And I'm now in another game. So, it's not their fault that they're stuck in a loop until 5 a.m. What you could do is you could go and say, hey, I'm going to play your game of Fortnite with you. We'll do one more match. And then when that match concludes, be the one to turn around and say, hey, okay, it's bedtime, as we've said. And they're more likely to, stop playing. Not because they're, not addicted, but just because they have that break. That's something that's gonna pull them aside. Unless, of course, you fall into the other category and both you and your child are now up till 5 a.m. Because that's always a possibility.
But then it's bonding time, and it's
exactly, it's family time. So yeah, no, it's very dynamic. This particular topic.
For sure, and this is why I love doing the podcast, because several times I've ostensibly the topic is something even esoteric, like abstract, like Assemble is today, but even when it isn't, it's more concrete. We get onto useful advice and tips like this, and I can't think of another D&D podcast. I'm gonna have a minor moment of patting myself on the back here, but I couldn't think off the top of my head of another podcast that we're talking about how to deal with your kids when we started talking about it.
Yeah, well, the thing is that's what Assembly is all about. Assembly is about bonding, and as we were saying, one of the 3 major types of Assembly for role-playing games is bringing people together and putting people together, whether that's for a role-playing game or for for gaming in general, right? The advice still stands, because that's what it's all about. Like, role-playing games are a type of community that is just incredibly welcoming. I mean, sure, you'll have every now and then the kind of gate guardians who sit there and talk about quote-unquote real D&D. But I find for every one of those, I find like 100 different people who are like, please come and play with us. Are you a GM? Yeah, that's definitely the vibe from the community.
For sure. So we talked a lot about out of game. I know you can't really make that distinction as clean cut as that, but let's say meta assembly. If we talk in game a little bit, and you should be very, very good on this topic, because there's so many tropes around, starting in a tavern or whatnot, getting the PCs together or whatever it might be of your system of choice. There's likely a trope if it's an open-ended kind of homebrewy thing, rather than say something like Aliens or something, which is you're already in a pre-packed thing that you're doing.
Yeah, you're on a ship, something's coming to get you,
So in terms of like the former, then that kind of open-ended starting in a tavern, quote unquote, what have you got any tips on how to do that? Is that a big faux pas for you, or is that a solid?
Okay, so here's a couple of things. Let's start with building characters, assembling your character table. Now, here's one of the big rules that I have: is the GM's responsible to come up with at least a starting concept for a game table. What I hate is coming up to a game table as a GM and saying, we're playing D&D. What are we doing? And then I'll figure it out. Like, for me, that's nothing to get excited about. There's nothing for me to build a character in. Like, I don't have a world. I don't have a story. I don't have nothing. But what I always do when I am a GM is I'll give people a hook or something to really entice them or get them excited. And from there, I require my players to have 3 different things for every single game that I play. The first is you must have a tangible reason to go on this adventure. Why is your character Like let's make one together. Give me a location, like a biome, as it were, a location, environment, yada yada yada.
Let's look like snowy mountainous region then.
Cool, snowy mountainous region. Give me a NPC. Can be good, can be bad, can be evil, anything.
Let's go with something like a trapper, like a woodsman trapper kind of person who's catches hares.
All right, sweet. Now, I want you to give me one of these three choices. Hold your ground, run towards, or run away.
Hold your ground.
Cool. So, hold your ground adventures are where you are trying to maintain something or trying to keep the natural order of the environment around you against something. So, for example, if a troll is trying to attack your village, you're defending the village against the troll, for example. So, using these three elements, what I would say is the hook for this game is that your town is in the snowy mountains and you are part of the community here. There is a ranger who serves as the town's burgomeister, or the respective leader of the town. And they're the person who every season will head down the mountain towards the major city and gain some like sundry supplies, things that the town needs, and escort it back because of how treacherous the mountain path is. Now, unfortunately, he has not returned. You don't know where they are. This has caused some issues. So a small group have been deployed to go and try and find the whereabouts of the wagon, the needed supplies, and bring them back to the town so that you can last through the harsh winter. So, that's our story. Now, my requirement for you when you build your character would be your character must be invested in this story. Now, this could be that maybe you are making a character that's the grandson of the burgomeister. Maybe you're making a character who is, a baker who is in need of flour, and the town is simply out of flour. Maybe you're one of the town guards, and you are simply the most qualified person because the other guards have already gone with the burgomeister, right? Whatever the reason you can concoct for whatever build or whatever character you're making, you must be connected to the story. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to get to the story and then have to find a way to shoehorn your person who is on a quest to find their lost sibling who vanished in the deserts of Amandir while exploring a pyramid, right? It's like, cool, I have absolutely no idea why you're chasing after this burgomeister, why you were in the snowy mountains, why you give two damns of if these people survive. That's not my role, right? So that's number one. Number one, connect to the story. Number two, you must have a valid reason to connect with and expect the success of the party. That means to say, even if you are an edgelord, even if you're someone who, is basically like, hey, my name is Dark Shadow Moonlight, and my goal here is to steal as much as I can from everyone. It's like, cool, very well, Dark Shadow Moonlight. Why are you working with all these other people? I work alone. Nope, try again. Okay, what if my character was arrested for doing something so dark and edgy, and now I'm working through community service with this other guy who is actually the town guardsman? Great. Perfect backstory. You are invested here. You don't want to go back to jail, and in order to avoid going back to jail, you have to do what this guy says. You can continue to be as edgy as hell, but as long as you continue doing this, you stay out of jail, and you're not on the run from the law. And more importantly, you as a player know that your character can keep playing the game, because if you choose to escape, then yeah, I'll let you escape. But the character runs off, and you come up with a new character.
Yes, yeah.
So that's how you connect to the story. The third and final one is, what is your personal motivation? Why are you not an NPC? This one's very fluid, and this is for me as a GM, my inspiration. This can be those sure, I was also separated from my sister at birth. I'm trying to find my sister, so I've decided to journey away from the town in order to look for her. You know what I mean? So these are those stories that then get added in order to inspire me to then write backstories and write these features into my adventure. So when I assemble my table, when I put them all together, these are the things I look for. These are the things I expect from my players. Because once all of those come in, you have very little work to do to get them together and on the road. And yeah, like some of them will create their own connections to each other. Some of them will already be familiar with them, even if they're not friends. They kind of have a pre-built relationship, and it's just about exploring it. So that's how that prep work helps with my assembly. From there on in, the location doesn't matter so much. I know that there are some people out there who turn around and poo-poo the idea of a tavern, and I want to say this to you. And I want anyone who believes that taverns are boring to lean in really close, right? Just lean in close to your headphones. Listen very carefully. You ready? Okay. The tavern's not boring. You're boring. Taverns are some of the most amazing places if you put your imagination and minds to it. I mean, sure, you can be more creative and you can put yourself somewhere else. Like, there are lots of places to find yourself. The guard post, at a dock, on a mountain, hunting elks or whatever. But there is nothing wrong with a good tavern. A good tavern doesn't have to be made of wood and have a bartender. A good tavern could be a clockwork mechanism built by warforgers that when you enter will automatically drag you through a buffet line before placing you onto a seat with a professional number on it, where a tiny little mechanical half-bodied robot pops up to be your server. It can be a fungal forest where fairies actually serve you drinks and the like, where magic is used in all the meals and all the dishes. You could find yourself in a tavern that is kind of at the bottom of a rusty old ship that has been gutted and beached, filled with pirates and scallywags who rotten teeth and if your tavern is just a place you put your players to start an adventure, then yeah, of course it's going to be boring because you haven't filled it with anything. Colorful characters, colorful decor, unique foods. Like I have a horror game where a long time ago when I made it, I made a tavern called the Tequila Mockingbird. And it was a place where they served vampire steaks, because it was just funny. And it was, just these bloody raw steaks that were, kind of served on a bed of garlic. And there were just lots of little cute things that was like, this is a like Victorian Gothic horror themed place. Like there was the Jekyll and Hyde potion as well, where the potion would come in like a martini glass and you would like put a couple of drops into it and it would start smoking and then turn from like this apple green to a vibrant red, and you would drink it and it would be a health potion, right? Like the bartender was the bartender was a drider who sat behind the bench, and everyone thought it was a drow, like for the longest time. And I think the only time they figured it out was when they were being tracked by an assassin. The assassin followed them into the Tequila Mockingbird. The assassin originally wasn't going to do anything, but they figured out where he was. They attacked him and he attacked back. And then all of a sudden, the bartender sort of crawled backwards from behind his bar and up the wall, and everyone was just like, "What the shit!" And then he webbed up the assassin, and then from there on, it was just like it was such a cool moment too. So again, like taverns and bars and pubs and all of these things can just be such creative places if you allow them to be. What's more important is like how you build that scene. Because that's what's going to happen. It's going to be whatever you make out of it.
I think I was going to say once you've got those three pieces in order, like you said, for your characters, the starting point physically becomes kind of moot in a way because it's the important pieces are there. So whatever happens, wherever they start, it's the adventure awaits.
Exactly.
They could start,
100%.
on inside the tavern, on top of the tavern, because why not? They're fixing the roof. Who cares? Like, who knows? It's
you're in a toilet. Anything. Whatever. Yep.
In fact, I'm planning to do a one shot for a couple of just three friends in the new year, and we've kind of done a broad session 0 / this is what the game. This is how you play the game and how you make a character. And I think we're planning on starting at the end of a dungeon, basically. So like we joined two of them who had already got to the end of a dungeon. One's like the older brother looking after the younger one who's gone out adventuring, and the other one has come to find them because they've taken too long or whatnot. So we were going to start at the end of a dungeon and work our way out, which I could have. I've done zero planning, as you can probably tell, but I was in my head thinking about that. There's probably a number of cool things that I could probably work in to that environment of, maybe their route they took in was broken, so they have to take a different route out, which is full of like reverse traps, like the triggers are at the end of the hallways and stuff, because they're leaving the dungeon and so on and so on. So
oh, amazing.
Again, with that one, I'd inadvertently, as I said, I think two are related, and one's gone out adventuring for some reason. I can't remember what it was, but again, it was a couple of those checkboxes had been checked already, and which is why it was kind of trivial to come up with this seemingly wacky idea. But the point being is that it isn't wacky, because it is what it is. At that point, you can.
Well, yeah, exactly. And it's not that the location is not important. Is that the location goes from having to be somewhere for your adventure in order to link everyone up, like gathering everyone because they're all answering a wanted ad to meet the quest giver, to it doesn't matter where it goes because you've built those foundations of the backstory, the connection to the party, and the self-motivation that as a GM, yeah, you can put them anywhere. And in fact, most of the time, I find that when I do that, I'm more inclined to split the party so that they start in somewhere natural to their characters and they simply drift towards each other very naturally as well. And yeah, sometimes that's at a tavern, sometimes it's not. So
yeah, I'm definitely going to steal Tequila Mockingbird. I'm desperately trying to find a place.
You know what? A lot of people have, and I've spoken about it a few times. The Tequila Mockingbird has featured as a donation suggestion for a friend of mine's stream as well. So the Tequila Mockingbird shows up in a few different streams here and there as I've floated in chat and I've thrown out the idea. It's a very cool name, and I can't take full credit for it. It was actually one of my young kids from the youth center who actually came up with the idea.
Awesome.
And we were throwing around a whole bunch of things, like the original tavern owner was a dwarf called Jaeger. And so everyone would call him Jägermeister.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun little things there.
We're coming towards time, and my list is we've gone through about 30% of it, but I don't know if there's anything that you really wanted to discuss on this topic that we might not have got around to yet.
Yeah, look, I'll say something very, very brief about character composition. Do not be afraid to play your characters with the non-ideal party makeup, right? You do not need a cleric, a wizard, a rogue, and a fighter. You do not need to even have 4 completely different characters. The thing is, your character is not defined by your sheet. I've played so many games in which I've never touched a dice or even looked at my sheet, but the characters, the personality, and the way that I was drove me into whatever I was. You can have 2 rogues who are completely different but identical on paper, and it's not about what your numbers are, but what and how and why you roll those dice in the first place. So do remember that, and never be afraid to challenge what these characters are capable of without having to sit there and sort of go, we're playing this class, so I can't play a cleric because we already have one, or I can't play a paladin because we've already got a fighter. Never limit yourself that way. But always make sure that that everyone is going to have fun, right?
Yes.
Don't just make a character irrelevant to the other person, right? Like, don't sort of look at the other guy who's made a paladin and go, I'm going to make the same paladin but better.
Yeah.
Just be cool. Do your own thing. Let them do their own thing. And if you find that you're doing the same thing, sit down and have a chat, open up a discussion, and say, hey, I noticed that your paladin of righteousness and light is very similar to my paladin of righteousness and light. Maybe there's a way we can be different as personalities, but maybe be friends and have us both be paladins of light who are on a quest united to act as like a buddy cop combo to go and do justice. Yeah, like there are lots of opportunities there that exist, and yeah, just communication's the way to go about it.
One thing I love leveraging about TTRPGs is the differences from video games, which is where I spend a lot of my time as well. So I really love to lean in to those things that make TTRPGs because you can't get them anywhere else. And one of those things is not needing a tank, a healer, and 3 DPS. Like, you don't need that. So I'm hugely encouraged being like, just be 5 barbarians. That will be so rad. Like, please be 5 barbarians. That would be sick.
I definitely we have plans for a band of kobold bards called Dragon Force in the works. It's one of those games that we want to play one day, but haven't gotten around to.
Yeah, I that sounds great. And like I think I've bandied around on the podcast before, like 4 turtles that are different monk
Ninja
paths.
Turtles.
Yeah, like it's
Yep.
a classic, and it would be so good and so
classic.
fun. And that's what I always like to tell people when they're like, "Oh, I can't," like you said, "I can't play a paladin because we've already got a paladin." Fuck that, man. Just do what you want.
Yeah, yep. And you know what? People think that we're just being polite. No. We mean like, yeah, no, just do what you want. Like, have fun, talk to the other player, and find those differences, and have a great time.
Mm-hmm. One final thing on that topic that I did want to say, and I know we're reaching time, but in another game that I used to play in, there was a guy, and we ended up rolling characters for like 3 different occasions, and he was always like, "I'll wait until everyone else has picked, and then I'll pick, I'll plug the gap that remains." And so many times we were like, "Don't worry about that. If you don't want to play a healer, don't play a healer, because chances are nobody else is going to want to play a healer, and you don't need one anyway." And he's like, No, I'll wait. But it happens so many times that I think it's that is the bit that he finds he enjoys filling the niche that's required of a party. So there is a slight double-edged to that discussion, in that sometimes if people are wanting to do that I think is because they enjoy being that thing that everybody else needs. So yeah, that was my only last little comment on that one. Anyway, thank you for that discussion. Is there anything you would like to promote?
Ooh, well, that's very interesting. So as I mentioned, I'm just all over the internet. And so anywhere you can find Dead Aussie Gamer, you will find me. I have my own Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Dead Aussie Gamer, where you'll find me running a lot of my very, very casual type of games. I also have a handful of professional games that I have with a lot of celebrities. I've done tons of games for conventions online and things like that. And I think probably my most notable appearances have been on the D&D official Twitch channel through 2 shows, Ghost of Saltmarsh, Call of the Kraken, as well as Descent into Avernus, Blood Wars. So I was featured on both of those. Done a bunch of shows on how to be a great GM, as well as my biggest show to date, actually, is on the Dingo Doodles channel, where I played with Felix, the DM for Dingo, along with Gothy, and we did a 3-part promotional game for their Kickstarter for Fool's Gold, which was incredible. So part 1 is on Dingo Doodles channel, part 2 is on my friend Robert Hartley GM's channel, and part 3 is on my channel as well. So you can check them out at those various places as well.
Awesome. So all of those lovely, awesome links will be in the episode description, and I would encourage you to check out all of Michael's stuff.
Oh, and there's definitely more. Google is like your best friend. like I'm on WSD 20. I've done stuff for like Perception Studios, and this just everywhere, dude.
Everywhere. Well, then I won't put any links in because you're just everywhere. So there's no.
Yeah, just put Dead Aussie Gamer. Look him up. My goal in this career has always been to be like, man, I know that guy from somewhere. Like, what the hell? Like, he's just in everything. He's everywhere.
Well, you are one step closer towards that goal after today.
Well, I hope so.
So all that's left to say is thank you ever so much. That was super fantastic, super eye-opening in some places. So no, I really do appreciate the discussion on, again, on paper, quite an abstract topic, but I think we did a damn good job at it.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It was absolutely a pleasure, dude.
Awesome. Thank you to everybody for listening at home. As usual, at least all my links will be in the episode description still, so please go and check those out. Feel free to click through on some of those. But otherwise, thank you all for listening, and good night. And now it's time for the Patreon shoutouts. Thank you to Robert Hartley, DM for Viva la Dirt League and writer on the D&D Logic web series. I would encourage everybody to check him out at Robert Hartley GM on Twitter and Twitch. Thank you to Optional Rule, a 2-time guest of the show and a very insightful and knowledgeable source of information. Please check them out at www.optionalrule.com. Huge thank you to a great friend of the show, Matthew Perkins, who's out there making hilarious and educational Dungeons & Dragons content. Please go and check out his stuff at matthewperkins.net, where you can find links to all of his socials and all of his content, including his own Patreon, which I would very much encourage you to check out. Thank you to Matt Street, at mpstreet88 on Twitter, for supporting the show. If you need support running your personal or business schedule, head to virtualtimehustle.com or on Instagram to make that difference between should do and done. Boss it better with support from Kat, who will help you get back that essential time you've been searching for. If you would like to support what we do and get 4 shout-outs a month, head over to patreon.com/thinkingcritically, or you can just buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/thinkingcritically